educating, and we're going to be working on some. What are the political polls? Why do we have political polls? What are all these phone calls that we get during the political season, and which ones should we participate in, and which ones maybe we should stay away from? So we're going to get right into it tonight. But if you want to call in and talk to us about it, our number is 270-945-3418. And with that, I'm going to just get right into it, Steve.
Dig into it. It's good to be back, too. Interesting that you bring up polling for tonight's topic because obviously we've got our own race. Now there's a presidential race, it just opened up a little bit wider this week with, Gavin Newsom from Florida in the race. Obviously a lot of back and forth between the Trump campaign and his campaign. And there's a lot of...
Ron DeSantis.
Ron DeSantis, sorry. Not Gavin Newsom. Where did that come from?
I don't know. Everybody expects him to jump in at some point. But
well, anyway, at the end of the day, just that it's widening up, but there's a lot of information coming out of polls. And what do you believe?
Yeah.
What do you not believe?
Yeah.
So I'm glad you picked this topic for tonight.
Well, here's one of the reasons that I got I came down this trail and wanted to walk down this trail a little bit is, and one, I'm no polling expert. I mean, I do a lot of statistical work for my day-to-day job, but and it's a lot of the similarities to what I do, but I'm using usually count data and measurement data from our manufacturing lines and things like that to tell, hey, is there something we can do better, something we can do a little different, or why something happened. But when you talk about political polling, you're usually trying to. There's a couple different reasons why you get polled. One is some people legitimately want to understand where you stand, right? When I say you, I mean the public. So when we talk about, like, if you look up the word poll in the Oxford Dictionary, it says that it simply means to record the opinion or vote of. So it means that we're going to ask you what do you think about something. You're going to say, this is my opinion, or I'm going to actually vote on something. So that's why we call it polling, or when you go to vote, you actually go to the polls,
right,
quote unquote. And honestly,
I always thought of it as like a temperature check, right?
Yeah,
on
that's
a
good way.
topic. Like if
that's a perfect way to think about it.
If I was going to stick my thermometer in this pool of people, like my swimming pool, right? Mm-hmm. If you were going to stick it in the pool in my backyard, what temperature would it be, right? And if my pool in my backyard is a focal topic on education, right, or something like that, and my thermometer is just really cold, that's not something interesting to me. My thermometer would be your data feedback,
right,
for the pool
at that moment in time. At
that moment in time,
and there's a lot of things that go into polling, and one is it's at that moment.
Right. And then if it's low, then it's like an argument to, well, we've got to go market a different ad or a different campaign that changes the temperature of that measurement to make it a little bit warmer.
Right. And that's why political parties and political campaigns poll people, is because, well, that's what the main reason most of the time they're actually trying to gauge where you stand. And then also they try to find out, okay, well, what's important to you? So a lot of times you have, well, who will you vote for? But then you also have a series of questions that say, what do you think is the most important issue today?
Right.
Those things are, what I consider the true polling. They're asking a question, and they don't ask any if statements. They don't give you any if this or if that. They simply ask you, who would you vote for today? They give you the list of candidates. Who would you vote for? And then what if...
Well, they give you an information fact. So now that you have this sound bite or this information fact, does that change your of what you voted a minute ago?
Right. So they ask you. Well, they don't ask you the what if.
No, it's not a what if.
They ask you, what is most important to you? So they're asking you a direct question, and they may have a series, like they might say the Kentucky economy, the U.S. economy. Yeah. They might say, LGBTQ rights. They might say, a whole myriad of different things, and because they want to try to steer you to a set of a set of list, within a manageable list of topics or campaign topics, and then they but
they try to use that to align it to a candidate. Isn't that correct?
Well, they do, but that's actually a separate type of polling. It's what they call a push poll. So traditional polling is I'm just going to go find out what you feel, right, and why you feel that way. Now I can go run my campaign. I can try to steer my messaging to make sure that you like, to show my candidate or my candidacy as the one that's going to meet your standards. But what we see a lot of, especially today, is what we call the push poll. Excuse me. And in the push poll, they're not trying to find out how you feel. They're trying to steer you down a trail. They're trying to say, well, what if this person, what if I told you this person, kidnapped a baby when he was like 10 years old, right?
Would you still vote for them?
Would you still vote for them, right? And it makes you think when you hear those. If you get a poll call or a call for a poll, and I would suggest you walk through it, right? But when you're listening to that, you have to keep in mind, if they start asking you what if I told you this about this candidate, or what if I told you that about that candidate? They're trying to steer you. They're trying to put it in your mind that might have happened. And there's actually a lot of instances in the past that's happened. The Clinton campaign was notorious for using push polling. So was George H.W. Bush. George W. Bush. Sorry, the son, not the father. Was all there was a lot of that. Well, George H.W. Bush used them a lot too, because they were trying to get the messaging out about Clinton's, Bill Clinton's sexual escapades and things like that. That whole thing there were a lot of rumors going around.
Some mess on somebody's dress.
A lot. Well, that was after the election. But a lot of it turned out to be true. But the way they tried to get it out was through the push poll.
Yeah.
They tried to push down. They're trying to push an agenda down this poll by asking you leading questions and things like that. I don't like those. I don't really. I mean, they can be effective.
Well, we had a few during the statewide elections just last year in November.
Well, I just got. We had with Bashir's team this week about Daniel Cameron. So
I'm sure I haven't gotten them yet.
Yeah, so I've heard two separate ones that went out, and they were very much they were basically bashing Daniel Cameron. And trying to say all these things that really don't even affect his job, or that don't have anything to do with his job today. As
he's sweating right now. I mean, Bashir has got to be nervous about his candidate.
The early polling is showing them they're pretty tight right now, and if they're tight right now for somebody who's already well liked, and this is this is a very conservative state, he probably does.
And I think we talked about this in the last podcast. The variant of Republican voter turnout over the Democratic voter turnout.
2-to-1 easy, or 3-to-1.
It was pretty extensive on the Republican turnout. So if the Democrats don't get out and vote, that's probably going to lose them their race. I think everybody needs to get out and vote. It's going to be an important election, but just based on the voter turnout for the primary. And maybe it is like that. I don't know, because they already hold the seat that they have fewer voters turn out. I don't know, but it's not like he had a big candidate.
There wasn't there wasn't anybody. There wasn't anybody that's considered real competition coming out
for
at
the Democratic
same time,
Party. Yeah.
And we're, of course, we're just seeing. We can only see really Meade County data right here in front of us, but you can go look at the statewide. It follows. Pretty, the Republican vote. First of all, the vote overall was really low. I think it came out to about 15%, something like that,
of the total voter population.
So we had 3,011 ballots cast out of 22,500 voters, something like that. I don't know what that math is, but it's it's not very good. I guess I can look it up real quick, but at the same time, but when you look at the Democrat voter turnout versus the Republican voter turnout for the primary, the Republicans, came out and almost 2,000 of those, around 2,000 of those were Republican votes. So I guess it was about 2 to 1 when it comes down to it. Now that I'm actually looking at the numbers in front of me, I couldn't remember the numbers off the top of my head. But if you look at it, if you look at that, 3,011 from 22,000, I think it's 500 right now. It's hard to, it's 13%. So not quite 13.5%, and it's that's really, really, really bad when you think about we're selecting who's going to run for our governor. And I'm not trying to point fingers or say, hey, anything like, I'm just saying I wish more people would get involved in these primaries.
Yeah.
A lot of people complain about other candidates and things, but not having the candidate that they wish they had. They wish they had a different candidate. Well, the primary is where you choose that candidate, and a lot of people don't. I don't think they realize that. And we're going down a different trail right now, but it's an important one. I think that we because I'm just trying to encourage people to pay attention at the primary. Go find the person that is going to represent you and your values the best. I don't care who you are or what those are, but you need to go find a person and voice your opinion by going to the poll.
Mm-hmm.
That's what it's about. But getting back to these push polls, I just want to warn people about these type of polls. You're going to hear more and more of them as they come out. You're going to hear people say, "Well, what if I told you this? What if I told you that Daniel Cameron didn't do his job as Attorney General in the Breonna Taylor case?" That was one of the questions that I heard was on that poll. And it's like, well, that's an opinion that they're trying to put out there. That's a messaging that they're trying to put out there that they're going to reinforce later. You're going to hear them reinforce that later on with television ads, and they're hoping it's going to grip because now you're going to hear it more than once. Mm-hmm. I'm going to put it out as a what if statement in a poll, and then I'm going to follow up with, this is what I think you should think about that. And now it looks like it's legitimate because now you've heard it in 2 different places. So
another topic I think is interesting about push polling, especially if it's live, right? Like you're actually talking to somebody and they're asking you questions. Primary use of push polling is always typically negative, but it's also using a guilt trip. Oh, so you don't really know about the topic, so you probably won't be voting on that, will you? And it's always a spin like, so I don't really need to talk to you about that since you don't really know it. We could probably count on you not voting, right?
Right. Yeah, that's exactly right.
Yeah, and it comes off with so many different connotations. By the time you're done with that call, you may want to then go pick up the phone and or your tablet and go look up something that they said, because you're walking away from it feeling like, well, that guy made me feel like really, like a, I don't know,
Well, I mean, you can use it as a voter suppression tactic. You can go out and say, you don't have any good person to vote for, so you should stay home. Well, when you hear that, that means that they're trying to suppress the vote. They're trying to keep the vote down so that they can make their numbers bigger. Usually that comes from a minority candidate when you have a minority in voter registration, that is. When you have, So when you have, so in the state of Kentucky right now, the Republicans outnumber the Democrats. Mm-hmm. It's not a huge margin, but it is widening as we go, month over month.
But it's interesting because a push poll, unlike in opinion polls, information is not collected, it's not analyzed, it's following the completion of a push poll. Rather, the purpose is to persuade the listener to vote against an opposing candidate by giving them like negative information, which may or may not be accurate, right? So,
that's right.
So that's what you're going to end up, and when you feel like you're getting pressured, you're probably in a push poll. But I will tell you that the American Association for Public Opinion Research, they are absolutely against this, and then the National Council on Public Polls have denounced this practice. They don't think it's right. You don't get accurate data from it to make an assessment.
They're not looking, but the point you made earlier is they're not looking for data.
They're not.
The only data they're collecting there is did they convince somebody on the phone.
But they will use that data in a public forum to twist the minds. Well, the public polls are in, and they're telling us that a lot of people don't like them.
They gave a what-if statement, and they said they don't like this person.
Yeah.
but it's not
based off of
based off of a
kooky
what if.
questions. That's right.
Yeah, and they're very very kooky. They're they can. I read some examples. If you go up to Wikipedia, not the greatest source of data or information, but there's some interesting information. There is some interesting information there. I wouldn't say it's all always accurate or whatever, but in this case, I can take it. I can take it for its face value. But on Wikipedia will tell you, that push polling was used quite a bit in. I already said the George W. Bush, the Bill Clinton era, and places like that. In those time frames. But they're used every year. I mean, we got them from Barack Obama. We got them from.
It's a couple ways to know if you're getting a push poll. Usually, the organization conducting the calls is not named, or a phony name is used. So when you go to ask them, they're extremely evasive, and they'll give you evasive answers in response to requests for more information about the survey. Why are you doing this survey? Who are you doing this for? What campaign are you doing it for? And then it's like, click, you're out. So when you start asking questions back to the questioner, and they don't feel or they're evasive from wanting to respond to you, or you don't feel like the answer is truthful in response, you're probably in the game.
So in the state of Kentucky, they have to identify.
They do,
right?
But
And
they don't
so-
have to tell you. They still don't have to tell you the truth.
No, well,
And if
they
they're
do. They're
robocalling-
supposed to. If they get caught, they can be fined because it becomes more of a fraudulent.
Yeah, but how do you
setup.
prove that, and how
Well,
does
you'd
the
have
state
to-
enforce
no,
it?
that's exactly right. But what does happen is they hide behind multiple layers of organizations. And one thing they'll do is that they always hire a polling company to do this.
Yep.
And the polling company will gladly take their money. They think everything's legitimate.
That's
They're gonna
usually
ask the
somebody's 16 to 17 to 18 to 21-year-old son or daughter that's working at a call center.
Well, not even a call center anymore. They just do it from their home. It's all these work
Yeah,
from
that's
home.
true. Robocalls.
And so what happens is, they'll call you, and you'll pick up the phone, and they'll tell you what research firm or whatever they're with, and then they'll also tell you who paid for it. But usually that pay for is some sort of like, Kentuckians for a free. Kentuckians for a free democratic society or something like that, and it's a totally made up bogus name. It's legitimate, but nobody's really using it. It's not a truly active, because they can go. You can go make a PAC or what have you, legitimate with the state by registering. But it doesn't mean that how many layers are in that to understand who's actually putting the money into that. This came up with Kelly Craft's campaign, where her husband was basically putting a lot of the dollars behind, by far the majority of the dollars behind a PAC that was supporting Kelly Craft. I'm not saying that that's wrong or what have you, because in reality, they as a couple could put unlimited funds into her campaign. But there was something to having some isolation that allowed them somebody to go do more negative campaigning on their side. And that's the shame of it. I'm not saying that it's wrong, or I just don't agree with it. It's not for me to say whether it's right or wrong. It really depends on to what extent it is. But in reality, it's like it just feels dirty. It feels like, man, I don't get to know who anybody is, because anybody can control the message, and that's the shame of it. That's the shame of it for me, is that we got to talk to a lot of candidates, you and I.
Yeah.
Right? We talked to a lot of people, and man, I didn't meet one that I didn't like. I didn't meet one candidate that I really didn't like that I talked to personally. There's one, but we won't mention that name. But
Yeah. Well, I think, too, though, it's one thing to meet them. It's another thing to go do the background search on them. You know what I mean? What have you done for us? And a lot of the candidates that we've had have a great resume. You know what I mean? What's in the resume? And I'm not necessarily, because I'm a fan of skill, not necessarily your education level, but if you've got a certain skill set that's in need too, because a lot of corporations today are looking for skill sets, not college degree sets, and hiring people.
I think that's a good thing too.
Yeah, I do too. But I think you can meet somebody and it's great that they connect with you, right? That's one thing. Will they? And you can kind of get a sense of, will they always be like that, right? Or is this just because it's campaign season? And then typically in their attitudes and behaviors, you can do some research and find out that they're either always like that or that's just a campaign facade, right? But then deeper, you look at the work that they've done, like Daniel Cameron. I mean, all of them have great work in their background. I could not argue about any single one. I thought they all put up great campaigns. I think they made a tremendous effort to make Meade County a part of their decision process. And to me, that says a lot about the health of Meade County for its future and the work that our representation's done with Steve and Nancy. But at the end of the day, you cannot just judge a book on its cover. You have to do some homework.
Yeah, I mean, and what I liked about, most of these candidates. I mean, we're talking about on the governor's side, but we can go down. We talked to
Treasurer.
We talked to Secretary of State,
Secretary of Agriculture.
Agriculture. Yep. Not Jonathan Shaw. Not the.
He didn't show up, but the other one
didn't win, but he won. Jonathan Shaw won, but Richard Heath was here
several
times. Great guy.
Mm-hmm.
And if and I'm sure Jonathan Shell is going to do a great job. I just really liked Richard Heath, and because he was here. Ryan Quarles is the same way.
He did, yeah.
I think all the time.
If somebody was going to talk about a ground game, I'd say Ryan Quarles really gave up a hell of a ground game. I mean, he came in number 2 in the votes.
I think he ended up second in the voting.
Yeah, and without a lot of money. I mean, he had a ground game, and I think you get into the who's going to be the fighter at that point, because Daniel's got a different
but look how far off those polls were.
Completely.
I mean,
completely.
Daniel Cameron ended up with 47%, I think, throughout the state.
Mm-hmm.
I think in Meade County he was 62%.
Yeah.
So I mean, Daniel was really pushed up. Meade County really went heavy.
How did Ryan do in Meade County?
He came in third, 11.57%.
So Kelly Craft came
in second, 13.66. But let me tell you something. Kelly Craft came here
twice.
Ryan Quarles came here multiple times.
He did. Daniel's been here 3 times that I know of.
Daniel's been here at least 3 times. I think 4 actually.
Could be.
There was another time that we weren't involved with it. He was here.
Yep.
Let's see. Let's see. I'm trying to think. Mike Harmon. Mike Harmon's
a couple times.
A big friend of Meade County. He's been here quite a bit. Alan Keck came on the show, and his wife, I think, came and spoke at the Lincoln Day. So if you went, and just to be fair, we had Stephen Nipper came here for Secretary of State.
We've had a lot of coverage.
Alan Miracle was here back in Christmas time. Allison Ball, her dad came on her behalf.
But we during all of those that came, we asked some really tough questions.
We did. I mean, and I was getting over to the treasurer because we actually had Mark Metcalf and Andrew Cooper Ryder on the show. Richard Heath has been on the podcast with us when we did Fancy Farm. And when we look at that even deeper, we'll go back up and talk to Alan Keck. Actually came on the show with us, so that was it was great to be able to talk to those people in a non fundraising setting or a non speech setting where we can just talk one-on-one. And man, they're real people. They all have real and they all have real ideas and things. I didn't agree with all of them. At this point, we don't have to get into it because
it's over.
Let's put it this way. I agree. All the candidates that are in that won, I agree.
So interesting you say that. I just shared a post too that came out. I think Nancy had posted it, but it talks about we got to get behind who we elected, and I think that at least in the governor's race, I think all of them have been very equally supportive. That whomever wins, we will all align and get behind.
Well, they've all said it. Now it's time to show it. Let's see where that goes. I think that I think by far you're going to see the majority of them. They want to beat Andy Beshear. I think you're going to see that. But let's go back to the polling. 47%.
Well, who do you think Daniel Cameron's going to pick for a lieutenant governor?
Oh, I don't know.
Daniel, I put my name in the hat if you're looking for somebody.
And I support that.
Okay,
decision.
yeah.
I do.
Daniel, if you ever watch the show, I put my name in that. But there's a lot of probably good candidates for that spot. I wonder if he's thought about that yet.
I mean, you just look at some of his opponents in the just that list there is remarkable.
Strong list, yeah.
That's strong. I mean, I don't know if they want that position, but I don't see why not. I mean, Ryan Quarles might want it. Mike Harmon might want it. Kelly Craft. I don't know if that's her thing or not.
See, I find it difficult. How do you trash somebody?
Alan Keck would be a really good one.
Yeah, but how do you trash somebody in a campaign and then all of a sudden
it's hard.
See, that's the part I don't like, and I think most of our Republican voters don't like that. When we start trashing one another,
I think that's what drove I think drove up Daniel Cameron his numbers.
He stayed positive.
He stayed very positive, very few negative campaigns ads that I could remember seeing.
The only thing that I saw that would have twisted a little bit over the argument was the true candidate endorsed by Donald Trump.
Well, but that's the truth.
True. Yeah, that was the truth. But he emphasized it.
Of course, Kelly would say, "Well, that was before I got in."
Yeah.
He endorsed before I got in.
Got it.
Well, it's like, you didn't make the call.
No, I know.
And then of course it hurt that they tried to say, oh, he's Mitch McConnell's person. Well, Mitch McConnell Mitch McConnell hates Trump, and then that's what the word was going around. But Donald Trump endorsed and didn't remove his endorsement. He kept his endorsement throughout the entire campaign. Even did ads.
But that's Donald Trump. He's very consistent.
He is. He made his decision and he moved forward. And I don't think that Donald
be careful.
Trump
you're gonna be associated as a MAGA Republican. Oh my gosh, it's national news.
There's worse things.
Go ahead.
There's worse things to be called. I imagine.
Yeah.
But and I would proudly wear that. It's the thing is that Donald Trump had he endorsed him, and I don't think that Donald Trump would have endorsed him unless he really felt like he
had the skills to pay the bills. Yeah,
and I think he did. I think that's so. Whether or not, that doesn't mean that
we didn't
Donald
have
Trump didn't like Kelly Craft.
It
doesn't mean that he didn't like Ryan Quarles.
But he's already made his stamp.
He made his stamp. He said, "This is my guy. This is how I'm going to
back in." Yeah.
But here's the thing, I really think that the negative campaigning drove up the numbers. I mean, the last poll that came out showed Daniel Cameron with 33 to 35% of the vote on the polling. Now, this is the polls leading up about a week before the election,
right? And
that Kelly Craft had dropped back down to around 17. She'd been as high as like 20, 25, 24. And then she dropped back down to around 17. Ryan Quarles was at 15, and then the rest behind.
Yeah, but see, okay, so we're having a conversation about polling. Well, it never said that Ryan Quarles was going to show up in the polls, and
it said he was going to finish third. Is what
smack.
Yeah, and then he ends up, well ahead of Kelly Craft.
But that's the difference of a ground game.
It is. I mean, and people got to see him and meet him and talk to him
and personally connect.
And connect on multiple, not just multiple occasions, not in multiple settings, but on multiple topics. Whether it's the farm, whether it's the Bashir lawsuits, whether it's about those things that really affect
him and both Daniel Cameron were, tied up in lawsuits.
And I'll give this. Oh yeah, absolutely. But I will give this to Ryan Quarles. Ryan Quarles connected on more topics than Daniel Cameron did. Daniel Cameron, his experience was in, as AG, and it's kind of a narrow, not narrow, but he has to run an entire organization. One of the largest organizations in Kentucky. It's the state police and all that roll up to his office, and so. Like the
FBI does to the president?
In a way, sort of in a way, but it's like, it goes through the chain of command, but ultimately he's the one that's, I think, is the one that runs that organization, or at least has oversight on the organization. And then you have, but then you also have all the prosecutors, the county attorney, well, not county attorneys, I'm sorry, the Commonwealth attorney, and such. So, so it's a big organization. So he does, but it's still compared to the agriculture, it's kind of narrow. I mean, you think about it, your gas pumps,
Yeah.
agriculture commissioner, your farms, agriculture commissioner, state fairs, county fairs, agriculture commissioner. That's a big, broad set
Granaries.
of duties. Granaries,
Agriculture Commissioner.
It's so whether or not
Cost of goods sold from the state out exported from the state.
Yeah, and exactly. I mean, he deals with China. He deals with, those are all things that that he's got the touch. He has been able to touch.
Well, obviously that's helped out with Comer, right? Comer, that's what Comer got elected as
Comer
a
came
state
through-
representative. He was a former.
Yes, he was a former agriculture commissioner before, and he was the one before. Right before he was the predecessor to Ryan Quarles. I don't think Ryan Quarles is done. I think he's going to run for he's going to run for something. We've got who knows what's going to happen with Mitch McConnell seats the next Senate seat to come up. So that's what, in 3 years, 3 and change.
Well, we already know who's running for that. Just kidding.
Besides you mean?
Yeah, that's right. Everybody just back out. I got this. I'm just kidding.
Yeah, no, I mean, hey,
Good kidding. I'm kidding.
but the thing is that I think that's an important thing. Who makes the best candidates, right? The best, but not the best candidates, the best leaders, right? The best leader is not necessarily the best candidate, right? And let me explain. The best candidates when you think about who were the best leaders in the United States history, you talk about George Washington, you talk about Thomas Jefferson, you talk about
Abraham
Lincoln. You look at
Ronald Reagan.
But looking at those people, right? Specifically Washington and Jefferson, they were reluctant to be to lead. They actually had to go ask them, please come run. We need your leadership, right? We don't see that anymore. And
We did it with Eisenhower.
I mean, to an extent, I think so. I don't know how. I don't know how much I would call Eisenhower. In that, I don't know if I put Eisenhower in that same group of leadership, though. I mean, it's different times and different eras and different circumstances. We were coming out of World War II. Everybody was in a fervor. You had.
See, interesting story about Eisenhower is Douglas. He worked for Douglas MacArthur, and MacArthur was ready to push all the way through northern Korea and into China and just end it.
Yeah.
Right? But then Eisenhower gets out and he runs for office, and now MacArthur works for Eisenhower because the military's run by the civil authority. And so now we don't go into China and to Northern Korea and end it all with one more whack-a-mole. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
But again, for some reason, the American people thought that, we needed that strength in our office. I think there's a lot of people today that think we need that strength in our office too. So do we pick somebody that's never served in the military? Or do we pick a scrapper?
Well,
you know what I mean?
The thing is that the people we pick are not necessarily. A lot of them, there are a lot of people that we pick that had military experience, and I use air quotes, not out of disrespect, but out of the fact that a lot of them went into the military or went into some military role just because they had the thoughts of a political career someday. And that's a different type of leader.
But Eisenhower served an entire lifetime in the service.
Oh, no. Eisenhower is not who I'm talking about.
And I know, but
I'm
I
talking
got
about the more modern.
No, I got you. I'm not saying that. You're referring to like the Bush, the younger Bush. I got it. But and Clinton, and I think did the same thing. But at the end of the day, polling is one piece of the research. While polls may give you some idea as to what people's temperature is towards a topic or a subject, it's important for you to know the depth of the poll. What were they asking in the poll before you just take it at face value in the news?
Let's talk about the statistic, right? Now that you have the data, you have a statistic. And now you have to be able to read that and understand what people are doing. So how do they get that? So one, you have to take a a sample.
It's me.
Is that you? Okay.
Mm-hmm.
You take a sample. What is a sample? A sample is we have 30,000 Meade Countyans, just over 30,000. Approximately 24,000 of those, just under 24,000, are eligible to vote. That's not a sample. That's our oh gosh, the word just went out of my mind. That is our
aggregate
population. That's our
population.
population, right?
Voter population.
In this case, a literal population, but it's a population. It's everything. Everybody that we want to know something about is in that group.
So out of
Now,
that
we're
group,
gonna
we
take
take a sample
of that, and we try to do it based on, ethnicity,
Marital
status,
number of
male,
kids
female,
household.
data, things like that, and they put out a call. Now, you don't get an answer on every call, right? And in a lot of
But you
in
keep
most of these
calling
cases
the
are
same
live data.
You keep calling the same data point though. You married couple, minimum 2 children, middle income family. Who's
So you
struggling.
get what we call
an
a
answer.
viable sample.
Response. Mhm.
So you need to have a viable sample, which means
You
I
gotta
have to
talk
have
to
enough
enough
people
Answer
that,
the phone.
that I have to actually physically talk to enough people to get answers from them to be able to apply that to my sample. And if I don't get enough, that's where you get that
Skewed.
the error rate.
The skew data.
When you see that error rate in polling, and you'll see some polls say, "Oh, it's got a 6% or 7%." If you have a 6 or 7% margin of error in your poll, that's a big range.
Yeah, anything
Because-
goes. Anything
Yeah,
goes.
That's right. So you really want to be down in that 2-3% margin of error to be able to say it's getting into accuracy. But
Yeah.
even then,
And don't think for 1 second, and I don't care whether it's presidential or gubernatorial. You think or you hear a poll that says, well, he's leading by 40 points in the polls. And it's such a gap. You think that horse is in the lead for the race. All you have to do is show up to vote to change that.
That's right.
And so most people decide, well, what's my vote going to do? Everybody's already leaning
and call
that
your
direction.
neighbor, call your buddies, and say, "Hey, go vote."
You believe differently, show up and vote because they didn't sample you, and go and vote. But it does matter. I've seen it happen in the last 3 elections that I've seen in this county, where the voter turnout could have went in any direction based off of their own voice. And it's the population of the vote. So your voice is heard. And you're picking the people who are spending your tax dollars. So show up, vote, especially in the local elections. I mean, if now's the time that if you really like the agenda of where the state's going and our values, I honestly feel like if we do get Daniel Cameron in office, based off of our congressional population, we're gonna see a lot more.
Well, here's the thing about people say, well, that's a confusing question because that's one question that's almost always on every poll.
Mm-hmm.
Is Kentucky headed in the right direction? And
well, we're first of all, we're last in everything.
Well, but
we're
are we
last
headed
in education?
But they're not asking about that. They're not asking if we're perfect. We're asking, are we headed in the right direction?
Out of all the 50 states, we're in the bottom. I'm just saying.
We're in the bottom. We've been in the bottom.
But we've been in the bottom.
But that goes into.
But that comes with time. So now we've got the right people in office. So we got to build it back to.
Well, there's a lot that goes into that too.
What
is important to you, right? What is important to you as a state versus what's important to New York? So you have to look at it through the lens that they're looking at it through, right?
Mm-hmm.
Is college education the most important thing to Kentuckians?
No, not all.
No, it's not. So who cares what our ranking is in college education? It's about skills. We have a high population of skilled labor, people who are working.
Yeah, but when you start looking
in air conditioning and heating, people who are building houses, people who are working, loading trucks, people who are. We're talking about union type jobs. Not always union, but there's a lot of transportation,
skilled labor,
and those pipe fitters and things like that. That's what's important to Kentucky, and it has been from the beginning. So when you compare us to, Massachusetts or something, and say our education system is they're only talking about college education. They're not talking about skilled laborers. I'll take any state in the South when it comes to skilled laborers against anybody in the North. The North has not been. They've been forcing everybody into. Now I'm not talking about.
How do you
I'm not
think
talking about Pennsylvania?
How do you think
I'm talking about up in New York and New York City and where these things come from?
I got you. How do you think what do you think the thought is in our state about all of the national stuff with let's talk about border security. These individuals are going somewhere. What's our state stance? Do you think? But if you were to ask the opinion of people,
I think it's highly important to us because of the labor market here. Is probably more directly affected by illegal aliens and things who come into the workforce and might be and might get some of those jobs. But there's not when you think about it, I mean, we don't do. I look around. It's like when I was a kid, we were all out putting up hay, bringing in hanging tobacco, all that stuff.
We were
now. Tobacco's gone away.
Well, under Bashir's leadership, though, a lot of people got bought out of going to work.
Well, that's true. That's true. But I mean, you think about it. Even in the farmers are more mechanized now than ever before. And so, you have one guy or two guys on tractors out doing all the work that you used to hire teenagers and stuff to go do that work, or migrant workers for that matter. So I don't know how much of that is really. Of course, I'm not out, standing in line for a farm job, but I mean, I don't see kids going and working in the farms.
Not unless they grew up on it, yeah.
Unless it's their family farm. And
all right, I'm going to change it again. One more subject I want to talk about tonight before we wrap it up tonight: the debt ceiling. Where do you?
Well,
where's your stance?
I need to go back to that.
All right, go ahead.
Because you were talking about border security and things. I think we think it's very important. In Kentucky, but it's not the most important. I don't think that's the most important thing to most Kentuckians.
Now, do you think that's because
economy.
We don't see as much of it as the border states
and
then these
enough.
big in these
I mean,
cities?
They're not busing into Kentucky because we don't have sanctuary cities and things in Kentucky. But it does
seems like an easy place to hide
because a lot of that does bring like the opioids and things, the fentanyl. Coming into their communities and things. That's where it's important. But the number one thing I think people are talking about is, how do we get to where we just get jobs where we can kind of just make a living? I mean, not everybody. No, everybody who talks about are we all making millions of dollars? I don't know too many people that says, "Hey, I want to make millions of dollars every day." Most of us just want to make a living, raise our family. Now that's families are probably the most important thing to Kentuckians. Right. The first thing I thought I could think of coming out of high school was, what I'm not looking for. I'm not looking for just any girl to have on my arm. I'm looking for a wife. I'm looking for a mate. I'm looking for somebody I want to be the mother of my children. I want to raise a family. I want to know that we have a stable relationship. That we have a stable. And I was very young when we got married. Kathy and I got married. And it's not always easy. I'm not an easy person to live with. I'll just tell you that straight up.
I know the feeling. So if you're a married man and you can't say that, I'd say, and
you're just wrong. Probably
you're just wrong, right? Yeah. But,
there's a few of them out there, but
that's right. But if you can say that, I'd say you've probably been married a pretty good long time to the person you're with because you self-identify as having problems. That means you're always working on yourself.
Yeah, exactly. So. So shout out to Kathy. I'm
same
sure
to Vicky.
Her job has been a much harder job than my job has been. So so thank you for that, sweetheart. But what I'm trying to say is that was important to me, and it was important to most of the people I knew. There were those that wanted to go do something in more of a career path. They went off to someplace else. They went to another city, or because they just didn't see that here. Now. In this day and age, I think Kentucky can be a bigger force when it comes to technology and things. I mean, one thing that I think that needs to be unleashed is nuclear power. right? And there's a company out there that is working on and has prototypes that they're trying to get built in Kentucky, not in Kentucky, but in the United States, that will actually reuse the spent fuel rods
Yep.
down in Paducah, right? Kentucky has the largest, I think it's the largest depository of spent nuclear nuclear rods anywhere, maybe in the world. And it's sitting down there in Paducah, and there's this company that says, hey, we can take that and make it viable again and use it for nuclear power in a safe manner. And if they can do that, if they can get that, if they can do, but they're not able to get they're not able to get permission to build those reactors or those samples, those
Why do you
prototypes.
think that is? Why do you think that is?
Because it would prove to be, it would
put a lot of fossil fuels and other
not just
industries
that.
out of business.
No, it's not that. It's
That's
really
what Tesla. That's why Tesla disappeared.
Well, I'll tell you what the biggest thing is that the same people who are fighting, I'll tell you right now, the same people who are fighting against fossil fuels are the same people who are fighting against nuclear.
I know.
It's not it's not like the oil companies and the coal companies are fighting against it. Of course, they don't want it here, but the same people who are fighting against those people are fighting against nuclear technology, and there's a lot of safe nuclear technology out there.
I don't disagree.
Right, and that's if there's a I'm going to plug a YouTube video here. I think it's on YouTube. I saw it on YouTube, so maybe it's out there. Maybe it's on Netflix or something now. But it's called The Nuclear Option. It's probably about, I don't know, 5, 6, 7 years old now. But it's about all these different companies who have come up with safe,
viable nuclear option.
I tell you what, it really hit hard when Japan had their nuclear issue.
Yep.
And and if they would have had one of these other companies in that place, there's one that's just it's completely modular. You can stack these different nuclear reactors. They're self-contained, and you can actually modularize them and build them to whatever you need in your area.
Wow.
There's some really cool stuff. So I really go read about that and check out these companies. Now, Bill Gates has got one.
The nuclear option.
Yeah, it's called The Nuclear Option. But Bill Gates is really heavy into one of these companies. I'm not going to say which one, but
last 2 minutes. Talk to me about the debt ceiling. Where do you think that plays on Kentuckians?
So I think that the debt ceiling, one, I don't think that we're going to default. I think that somewhere along the line there's going to be an 11th hour deal made.
I hope we default. I'll be honest with you.
I don't know what that looks like. I mean, here's the thing. I don't want to, right now everybody fears the debt ceiling. Everybody fears the default. But maybe it's not as big a deal as we think it is.
And that's why it's like the Y2K, right? So here's my thing. Every struggling American household will miss a payment to feed their kids. And they will not incur more debt to pay the debt they already have. Will they juggle and rob Peter to pay Paul? Our government is trying to figure out how to do that right now. And what's his name said that... what's his name? McCarthy said it the other day. He said, no, this timestamp isn't like the sky is going to fall on that day. We still have things that we can move around, right?
To make the payment.
To make the payment and not default on our debt. And that's what most American households are doing. And we're spending out of control. You know what I mean? And I applaud him for holding his ground. We're not going to create new taxes.
Yeah. So I really don't think that we're going to ultimately be defaulting on our debt. I think that it's going to hurt at home. I think that you're going to see some late payments to whoever they decide is going to be whoever they're going to have to decide when you like you brought up home.
How much worse is it going to get though? I mean, we're already inflation. You can't pay for cheese and
no,
meat.
but now you're not going to get a check.
Yeah, I got it.
Now you're not going to get you get the military. Is the military going to get their checks?
Don't know.
We don't know.
I know whose paycheck you can cut first. The FBI's.
Well, that's true.
I'm just
I mean,
saying.
they talked about. I mean, that's what's on the thing is IRS.
Mm-hmm.
You know, that's one of the things they want cut. They want those 87,000 IRS, the dollars for those 87,000 IRS agents to. They want to cut that out of the budget, and say because they don't need it. They're not necessary. The only reason they're necessary is because you're going to start bothering and bugging every citizen that deposits, you know, $50 or $100 into their account. You want to know where that's going to, whether you got they got tax dollars on it. That's why they want 87,000 people to be able to do that. They want to be able to go after the smallest amounts of money. They're already, you know, it used to be like $20,000. It used to be $20,000, I think it was, and then it went down to $10,000. So every time you deposited $10,000 into your account,
Yep.
maybe it's in or out, I don't remember, but it's every time you deposit $10,000 into your account at any one time, there's a flag sent to the IRS by the bank saying, "Oh, you need to make sure are they, you know." So every time our company, either of our companies makes a big deposit, well, see now that's you know, usually a company making those things, right? Now they want to know, you know, Biden wants to know if it's $600. If you're making more than if you're depositing more than $600, why? My company has to already report, you know, everything they give me in income, right? You know, what are you going after? What are you doing with that?
Yeah, I know.
That information. $10,000 is a good number. You know, we may even argue down to 8,000 or 5,000.
Given inflation rates, it could even go up to 15. So to be honest with you, to be fair.
I mean, it's like nowadays, a lot more money has to move just because the economy is inflated.
Yep.
And now, you know, he wants to do these things, and it doesn't make any sense. So yes, cut out those 87,000 IRS agents.
So if you were holding the line and you were the decision maker to get the votes, and would you hold the line and let us break the deficit in order to get the Democrats to align with cutting their spending, or would you?
My Rand Paul or Mitch McConnell's what you're asking?
Yeah.
Because Rand Paul would hold the line for the most part. Mitch McConnell would probably deal.
On the benefit of Kentuckians, yeah.
So I think there's good in both of those things. As I've said before, you have to have bulldogs. That's Rand Paul, and you have to have statesmen and
McCarthy's the bulldog right now. So
yeah, and I would say I would hold it. I would hold until I made sure that I got.
I would even get everybody into a frantic where we go past it and we actually break the barrier and find out.
It's easy to say when you know you're not going to have to worry about the next check.
Yeah, I understand that. I got that, but families are doing it in America every day. When is our legislation going to?
But I'm just saying, putting yourself in their shoes.
Yeah,
it's easy to say that when you know that you're not going to worry about you're not worried about the next check coming. You're going to have more people in that situation. Tomorrow, or after the debt ceiling or after the default, if there's a default, there's going to be more people in that situation than you do have right now, because you're going to have more people that are sitting there not knowing where that, because they're not prepared for that. They don't have any savings to go because any savings they had, it's already been wasted away in inflation, and now you have even less opportunity to save. We didn't get into this today, and I'd like to get into this on the next one. Is there's a lot of things being said about Ron DeSantis and the going to an income tax rather than an income. A sales tax rather than an income tax at 23% or whatever. There's a lot of good things in going to that type of a tax.
Yeah.
But we can get into that on another show.
So we got a meeting coming up tonight. There's going to be a meeting here.
Yeah, we're just having it. This is just a kind of a closed meeting. We're having not a closed meeting, but it's going to be just a.
We're putting together a fundraiser.
We're just putting together some things for the some budgeting and things for the upcoming election. So those will be things that we'll share on our regular
scheduled
meeting the third Monday of the month. And that's coming up. What is that going to be? It's going to be June. I think it's 17th or something like that. I can't remember. It's something around there. whatever that Monday is right there, the third Monday. So we will have our regular scheduled meeting, and then of course we're getting ready for the fair.
Yeah.
So we're looking for ideas for the fair. How what's our float going to look like? We're not going to be able to borrow the float from Hardin County anymore. They're selling the elephant, and we tried to buy it, but it was
the 19th.
The 19th.
Monday
Thank
the
you.
19th.
Yeah.
And so they wouldn't sell it to us.
Well, they would if we wanted to pay a lot for it, but we don't have a.
So are they going to let us borrow it for?
They don't have it. They don't. Nobody has it. No,
They already sold it.
It's in being sold. So it's by the
okay.
time we get to it, it'll be sold by the end of June. So that's when they've got. So we won't have that opportunity, and I'm not going to risk our dollars for that. So more power to them. If they can get more money for it, they'll put it.
But what I think I do hear you saying is the chairman of the Meade County Republican Party, we're getting behind our Republican candidates after the primary, and
That's
we're
right.
going to start promoting that for all of the races, so we can.
Yep. So we're
clean sweep for
we're
Meade
working
County.
we're working hard to get all those candidates to the county fair, and you know what? We need help. We need your help. So
Yeah.
if you're listening to us today, or whether you pick this up later, give us a call, 270-945-3418. Just we need volunteers, people who will come and help work the booths and things like that.
Yeah,
So
absolutely.
and stand up for our candidates. So Steve, thanks for as always hosting us tonight and doing all the background work, and I think you do an excellent job, and I really do appreciate you, buddy.
Well, thanks, Mark. I appreciate you too, and I learned a lot from you tonight. Good night, everybody.
Good night, everybody.